Silwad, a small town east of Ramallah in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, began Thursday under the weight of grief. In the early hours, the body of 15-year-old Palestinian Yamen Hamed was carried through the narrow streets by relatives and mourners. The Palestinian Ministry of Health confirmed that the teenager had been shot and killed by Israeli forces during an incident near the town's southern entrance. Footage from Silwad shows dozens of residents gathering for the funeral procession. Men shoulder the body of the teenager, wrapped in a Palestinian flag, moving slowly through the crowd. The sound of prayers mixes with the steady rhythm of chants calling for justice. The images capture what has become a recurring scene across parts of the West Bank: the loss of another young life amid continuing confrontations between local residents and Israeli troops. At the front of the procession, family members lead the way toward the local cemetery. Several pause briefly at the Hamed family home, where relatives and neighbours have assembled. Inside, women weep and hold photographs of the boy, while others touch the shroud gently before it is carried outside again for burial. The victim has been identified as Yamen Hamed, aged 15, a resident of Silwad. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, he sustained fatal gunshot wounds during an Israeli raid on the outskirts of the town on Wednesday evening. The ministry's brief statement said he was struck by live ammunition and succumbed to his injuries before reaching medical assistance. Relatives describe him as an ordinary teenager, sociable, playful, and helpful to his family. In a recorded statement during the funeral, his father, Yousef Hamed, recounted the moments before his son left home. He said, "Right before, he was at home with us, happy and playing. He was very happy. Usually when he leaves, he just says, 'Bye, I'm leaving.' This time, as he was leaving, he said goodbye to each of his brothers, his mother, everyone, one by one, saying, 'Bye, bye.' It was as if he somehow felt it this time, or God inspired him. He said goodbye to everyone, then he left, but did not come back. Praise be to God. He took him as a martyr. May he be our intercessor, and may God grant us patience." The father's words drew quiet nods from those standing nearby. As the crowd moved on, paramedics from the Silwad municipality joined the procession, some still wearing their uniforms from the previous night's emergency call. According to the local emergency services, medics received reports of a shooting near the town's closed southern entrance shortly after nightfall. Ahed Samirat, a paramedic with the Silwad municipality, described what happened when his team responded. He said, "What happened was that we received a call about an injury at the town's closed southern entrance. We went there and I saw people signalling to me. I thought they were young men, but when I got closer, they turned out to be Israeli soldiers. They threatened us with guns to turn back, so we did. We contacted the Palestinian liaison office, who told us to wait a few minutes while they coordinated. After about 5 minutes, they called and told me to keep the phone line open and move toward the injured person." Samirat said coordination was required through the Palestinian-Israeli Joint Liaison Mechanism, a process used to prevent direct confrontation between medical responders and soldiers operating in restricted areas. He continued in his statement, "We moved forward, but again an Israeli soldier tried to stop us. I told him through the speaker that the Palestinian liaison gave us the permission. He told me to stop. We waited about 7 to 8 minutes. We saw them surrounding something dark on the ground, not so clear, taking pictures of it. Then they told us to move forward. We approached and found the young man lying on the ground. He had already died. I asked the soldier as soon as I got out of the vehicle, and he said, 'He's dead.'" Local officials say the delay in allowing paramedics access prevented any possible medical intervention. There was no immediate response from the Israeli military regarding the circumstances of the shooting or the reported delay. Residents say Israeli troops had entered the area earlier that evening as part of what the army described in previous operations as security activities. These usually involve patrols, arrests, or searches following reports of stone throwing or gunfire against military positions. The road leading south of Silwad has been repeatedly closed to Palestinian traffic for months due to what Israeli authorities cite as security concerns. The town, located roughly 12 kilometers northeast of Ramallah, has witnessed periodic clashes since the start of the year. According to local monitoring groups, Silwad has seen several confrontations between residents and Israeli forces, often resulting in injuries from live fire or tear gas inhalation. At the funeral, uniformed municipal workers and school teachers joined the crowd. Some carried Palestinian flags, while others held signs bearing Yamen's photograph. The mood remained somber. People chanted prayers but avoided any escalation that could draw further military attention to the procession. Inside the family home, women recited verses of mourning. Older relatives described Yamen as a quiet student who often helped his younger siblings with homework. His mother, surrounded by neighbours, held a framed photograph showing him in his school uniform. As the body was laid out one last time, a relative bent down and kissed the boy's forehead, a gesture captured in several images circulated by local photographers. Those present said it was a moment of both farewell and defiance, a private act in the face of public tragedy. The Palestinian Ministry of Health said Yamen's death adds to the growing number of minors killed in the West Bank since the beginning of the year. Human rights organizations report that dozens of children have died during raids, protests, or encounters with Israeli forces across the territory. The Israeli army routinely states that its operations target armed militants and those involved in attacks or preparations for violence. In many cases, however, civilian casualties, including minors, have been documented by both Palestinian and international observers. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs has repeatedly urged restraint on all sides, warning that rising fatalities in the West Bank risk further destabilizing an already fragile security situation. In its latest update, the UN noted that access restrictions, road closures, and frequent raids continue to impede medical response and civilian movement in many towns, including Silwad. At the same time, Israeli officials maintain that forces operate to prevent attacks on settlers and soldiers in an area they describe as increasingly volatile. The military often cites incidents of shooting, Molotov cocktail attacks, or attempted stabbings as justification for heightened activity across the central and northern West Bank. Witnesses in Silwad told local media that gunfire was heard near the town's southern entrance shortly before 8 p.m. They say that shortly after, soldiers were seen blocking the road and preventing vehicles from approaching. The body of Yamen Hamed was later recovered from the scene by municipal medics following coordination through official channels. No weapon or alleged act of violence by the teenager was mentioned in the Israeli account, which has not yet been publicly released. The Palestinian Health Ministry's report listed the cause of death as live ammunition injury without further medical details. The shooting occurred during a period of heightened tension in the region. Israeli security forces have maintained an increased presence across the West Bank following recent attacks against settlers and military personnel. Checkpoints have multiplied around key routes linking Ramallah, Nablus, and Jenin, towns that have seen repeated clashes between residents and soldiers. In Silwad itself, residents say nightly incursions have become common. Families describe hearing armoured vehicles entering the outskirts of the town, followed by gunfire and searches. For many, the death of Yamen Hamed has reinforced a sense of vulnerability among local youth. The Palestinian Ministry of Education issued a brief statement expressing condolences to the family, noting that Yamen had been a student at the Silwad Secondary School. Classes were suspended for one day as a mark of respect. Teachers and classmates joined the funeral procession, some carrying flowers and school banners. Throughout the day, mourners streamed into the family home to offer condolences. Local officials, community leaders and clerics spoke of the need for protection of civilians and called for an investigation into the shooting. The town's mayor described the incident as part of a pattern that must be addressed through accountability and adherence to international humanitarian law. His statement emphasized that paramedics must be allowed access to the wounded without delay. By afternoon, the funeral had concluded and the crowd dispersed quietly. Security forces remained positioned at the southern approach to the town. Medical teams confirmed that no further incidents occurred during the burial. The following morning, municipal workers cleared the streets where the procession had passed. The scent of incense lingered near the cemetery as residents resumed daily routines. But conversations continued about the events of the previous night, about the call for help, the wait at the checkpoint, and the young life lost before assistance could arrive. As of Friday, there had been no official statement from the Israeli army identifying the circumstances or cause of fire that led to the death of Yamen Hamed. The Palestinian Ministry of Health reiterated its call for international monitoring of military operations in civilian areas and for unimpeded access for emergency medical responders. Humanitarian groups operating in the West Bank say coordination delays remain one of the most persistent challenges for first responders. They warn that even short restrictions can mean the difference between life and death in cases of gunshot injury. The International Committee of the Red Cross has previously urged all parties to respect medical neutrality and ensure safe passage for ambulances. For residents of Silwad, Thursday's funeral was both a tragedy and a reminder of the continuing toll of the conflict on young people. Each new burial deepens a pattern familiar across the West Bank: grief followed by silence, and silence followed by the expectation that it may happen again. As dusk settled over the town, relatives gathered once more at the Hamed family home to recite evening prayers. Photographs of Yamen were placed beside candles on a small table. Neighbours filed in, offering brief words of comfort before leaving quietly into the night. For now, Silwad remains calm, its streets subdued after a day of mourning. The facts remain under review, but one detail is clear: a 15-year-old boy is dead, and another family in the West Bank has buried a child.